What is up, everybody? The Premier League season kicks off this weekend, which means it is time for some predictions here on Touchline Talk. That's kind of how I'm going to do my preview this season video-wise, is just go through some of my predictions and things I expect to see happen. So we've got 10 predictions. Let's get going. Number 1. Everton finish top half of the table. Couple things with this. First, this is a team that added Theo Newberry, Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, and as of just a few hours ago, Jack Grealish. Everton have had a really good transfer window. And by the way, this team lost 4 times in the second half of the season. That's it. I know they didn't pick up an incredible number of points. There were some draws in there. But they were playing much better. Obviously, David Moyes knows what he's doing in general and knows how to get the most out of this club. I am all in on this. I'm looking at everybody else in mid-table. You've got some major questions, some of which we're going to get to as I continue here. This is the team that I'm all in on this season that I expect to be the one to take the really big leap. I would not be shocked if Everton, Christmas time, or even, February, March, are in the conversation trying to qualify for Europe. At the very least, I really do believe they're going to be top half of the table. Number 2. Nottingham Forest are going to finish 15th or worse. Maybe this is a slight exaggeration. Obviously, the goal here is to have a little bit of fun with these predictions, but you get the point. Think about this for a second. Manchester United had a better expected goal difference than Nottingham Forest last season. The difference between those teams was 23 points. It is hard to believe that Forest are going to have the same kind of season, A, because it's just difficult to do that again, and B, because they wildly overperformed relative to what was supposed to happen when you look at XG, when you look at the expected points table, things like that. They were clearly the biggest overachievers last season. And you lost Anthony Elanga, and, at least as of right now, you're playing in the Europa League. That is a recipe for a very poor league season. I don't think they're going to be in danger of getting relegated or anything like that. But I can talk myself into a lot of teams passing them. Because before last season, they were a team trying to avoid relegation. Obviously, they had a phenomenal season. They earned it. They were great. There are just a lot of reasons to be concerned and a lot of indicators that this season is not going to be quite as memorable, particularly within the Premier League. That's why I'm expecting them to really struggle and be near the bottom of the table. Number 3 is that Keith Andrews, Thomas Frank's replacement at Brentford, is first manager to go. This is not really a reflection on Keith Andrews at all. We don't know. And that's part of it is he's never really done this before. But that could potentially be a good thing. This is not because I think Keith Andrews is going to do a horrible job or have any major specific concerns about him. This is, obviously, you lost Brian Mbeumo. As I'm recording this, the Ono situation has not been sorted. But either you have a disgruntled player that you got to figure out how to get back in, or you just lost your other player that, the two of them were the attack for this team last season. But even more than that, here are the first 3 months of the season for Brentford. At Nottingham Forest, home against Aston Villa, at Sunderland, home against Chelsea, at Fulham, home against Manchester United, home against Manchester City, at West Ham, home against Liverpool. Okay, you expect them to win at Sunderland. Where else are the points coming from? The outlook of the season and the expectations change so dramatically when you go from being a mid-table team, you lose your really good manager, you lose a couple key players, you don't replace them all that effectively, it looks like. And all of a sudden, every game just looks like a real challenge. So this is not really particular to Keith Andrews. I just see a lot of losses and not a lot of points the first 3 months of the season, and then all of a sudden, all clubs go into panic mode and fire managers because they got to try and do something to avoid relegation, and this is the button that you can push. Number 4. This is probably alongside Everton one of my hotter takes. Chelsea are not going to be part of the title conversation. They'll probably finish top 4, at least top 5. But I've said this over and over, and I'll repeat it again here. Don't get fooled by the Club World Cup. Don't buy into the Club World Cup as some kind of proof that they have this all figured out and that they're ready to go toe-to-toe with Arsenal and Liverpool and Manchester City. Number 1, Brazilian teams are good. Chelsea played one European team from a top 5 league. With all due respect to Brazilian teams, one top 5 European League opponent at the Club World Cup. Yes, it was PSG. Yes, they beat them. Yes, it was impressive. Got to acknowledge that. But that has very little to do with what you can do over a 38-game Premier League season. That is just fact. The second part of this. Number 1, you're going back into the Champions League, so you can't do the whole split squad thing and rest all your players for most of the Conference League. And second, my other big concern with this team that I have talked about again and again, that the Club World Cup only further validated, is that alongside Rodri, Cole Palmer might be the most important player in the Premier League. When Chelsea were great, it was because Cole Palmer was as good as any player in the league. When Chelsea struggled, it was because Cole Palmer went missing and had a couple bad months. And Chelsea fell off a cliff. Cole Palmer kind of picked it back up. They recovered a little bit. Able to get in the Champions League. This is not about doubting Cole Palmer. This is about, can you ask Cole Palmer to be that player 34 times in 38 games while also playing in the Champions League after he just played all summer? And maybe João Pedro becomes this guy. Maybe they figured out the striker position. I like William Delap too. I like what they've done in the window. I'm just not convinced any of these guys are real difference makers in terms of taking you from where Chelsea were, where their own manager was saying we're not title contenders, to they're the best team in England, which by default means you're maybe the best team, one of the top, 3 teams in the world? We're skipping a lot of steps to get from point A to point B there. I'll believe it when I see it. They're very good. They're getting better. You got to give credit where credit's due. I see a very clear gap between the top 3 teams and everybody else. Number 5, Manchester United. These summer signings, the rebuilt attack, they struggle. First of all, these are 3 players, particularly Matheus Cunha and Bryan Mbeumo, who wildly outperformed their XG last season. Now, some of that is that Cunha is a really good finisher, and so he scores goals from low XG sometimes. And he's got that kind of quality. That is true. However, you are now expecting 3 players who, a couple of them had one phenomenal season, and another one who's had some good season at Leipzig. But Benjamin Sesko has never been Timo Werner at Leipzig. Let's not get this twisted. Maybe he is a much better, maybe he makes the adjustment much better than Timo Werner. It's possible. We're going to have to wait and see. My point is simply that players who have been much better in the Bundesliga have come over to the Premier League in these kind of situations and not performed. There is no guarantee Benjamin Sesko is going to be an immediate hit. Just ask United about Rasmus Højlund. there are reasons to be concerned about all of these players individually, and there is the simple fact that United have continued to buy attackers, and none of them have actually really worked. Maybe this is the group that does. Once again, I'll believe it when I see it. I trust Mbeumo and Cunha a little bit more than I do Sesko, but they have no time to settle. That's the starting attack now. They have to produce goals immediately. Are United going to be better? Of course, because they can't be much worse. They're going to be significantly better, probably. Does that actually mean you're in, top 8, top 5 contention? Maybe not. Talk a little more about that later. But I just don't expect these signings to be home runs. I expect them to be more in the vein of a Rasmus Højlund, a Joshua Zirkzee, because there are these glaring warning signs to not expect Cunha and Mbeumo to go be the players they were last season. Sixth, another team that I'm really high on is Spurs. Predict they finish top 5. I couldn't put them ahead of Chelsea, but I got them ahead of everybody else. Part of this is that I have real concerns about Newcastle and Aston Villa in terms of their ability to build off of last season, because you don't need to just repeat, you need to be better. And I don't see either of those clubs being better. The second part of this is Thomas Frank and how much I believe in him. And the fact that he is going to at least give them a better opportunity to succeed every game than Ange Postecoglou did, because Ange would not, at least in the Premier League, would not compromise one bit on his philosophy. And I also just think objectively Thomas Frank's a better manager. And he knows how to navigate this league because he's done a terrific job with Brentford. The third part of this, though, and I know part of the conversation is, okay, this is a new era for Spurs. You don't really have a face. Son is gone. James Maddison's already gotten injured. It's kind of an awkward time. But they did bring in João Palhinha. And I would not be surprised one bit if we look back in May at the end of the season and say that João Palhinha was one of the single best signings made by a Premier League team this summer, in this transfer window. I know it didn't work at Bayern. There are a variety of reasons for that, but he was sensational at Fulham. There's a reason Bayern spent so much time going after him. He knows how to do it in this league. There's a need to elevate that midfield. This was a no-brainer. And I think it's a signing that's getting slept on that could do wonders for Spurs. I just think they have a roster, a squad that's probably top 5. And I have a lot of confidence in their manager. I just like a lot of what is happening here as they begin this new era. Number 7. This is another one that's a little bit out there. Wolves are not only going to avoid relegation, they're going to avoid a significant relegation fight. They're going to feel comfortable most of the season. It is not going to be a worry the last couple weeks. This team, under Victor Pereira, averaged 1.5 points per game. That is more than enough. And yes, they lost 2 very, very important players, maybe their 2 most important players. I just still think there's enough there. And the team you saw the first half of last season is not Wolves. I don't know what happened. I'm not convinced it was entirely Gary O'Neill's fault. But for whatever reason, they were awful. And then they figured it out, and they were just fine. So the question is, who exactly are they? Are they much closer to the team you saw at the beginning, or the team the second half of the season that was much, much better? I'm firmly in the camp of it's the latter, even if they don't get exactly the same kind of production because the squad is not quite as good. I'll still take them over Brentford. There are some other teams here that I have some questions about as well. I do think that they are going to jump a couple teams and not only avoid relegation, but have some space and at least a team or two finish below them that is also safe. So we're talking more in the 14-15 range for Wolves. Number 8, one of the B teams qualifies for Europe. Talking about you, Brighton and Bournemouth. In theory, if you got 7, let's just assume that 5 of the big 6 are going to get in. Maybe Manchester United gets to 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that. Certainly a possibility. For reasons I already outlined, not exactly banking on that, though. Then you have Aston Villa and Newcastle. Again, as of recording, Isak is an unhappy, disgruntled Newcastle player who apparently doesn't seem to want to play for the club anymore. And may just flat out refuse to do so. That is not just losing Isak. It's a question of how do you get the replacement when all of your targets have already been acquired by other Premier League teams. And it is also how do you handle this if you're Eddie Howe and the cultural morale standpoint of it. Villa, still some questions about whether they can keep this up. Do they have, enough top-end talent there? I can easily talk myself into all 3 of those teams not finishing top 7. And I know Bournemouth have lost their defense that was so good last season and all those incredible individual players. They kept the attack together, though. That counts for a lot. Again, defensively, they won't be quite as good, but I will bet on those attackers and specifically that manager to keep them at least top half of the table. I would not be shocked if they still find a way. I think that there is still a possibility they have even another level to get to. Even though they lost so much from the back. And Brighton, generally that team is together. Obviously, you lost João Pedro. Believe in that manager, believe in what they're doing. You just basically know what you're getting with Brighton. They're always going to be in this conversation. So I expect one of those 3 teams, Villa, Newcastle, or United, to have a poor season, and either Brighton or Bournemouth take advantage of it. Then, number 9, getting to kind of the final predictions here, is very simply that, again, the promoted teams from the championship are going to go back down to the championship. Really, the question for me here is, where are the goals? Burnley, your main goal scorer is no longer at the club. Yes, you've brought in some pieces, but you weren't scoring a lot of goals to begin with. And then you lost Josh Brownhill. Leeds have all of these championship plus attackers, right? Many of the same guys who were there the last time when they got relegated. They just don't scare me. And I don't know, you know that they have goals in there, but I don't know who's carrying this attack. You need some kind of go-to goal scorer. So I have major concerns about those 2 teams. And then there's Sunderland. Sunderland have quietly had a very, very good summer. The problem is they had to have a very good summer to have even a chance of staying up because of the ground that they had to make up, not just with the other 2 championship teams, but even just watching the promotion final, the playoff final. The gap between those 2 teams was so obvious. And I know Sunderland won. But don't mistake that for them being the better team. And then you sold Jude Bellingham. How they got Granit Xhaka is beyond me. Again, that's going to be one of the signings, maybe the best value signing out there, unless you want to give it to João Pedro because that's a loan. But or Jack Grealish, he might be in that conversation too. But Granit Xhaka is not keeping you up by himself. So they have done a lot in terms of investing in these pieces to at least give themselves a chance. And maybe they don't finish 20th. Because I do think they have more or less caught up to Burnley and Leeds. But then you got to go take the next step. And I still don't think we're getting enough emphasis to how difficult it is to make that leap and catch the not only the other teams from the championship, but then somebody else. We're talking about a team that has been solidly mid-table to top half of the table in Brentford as a potential relegation candidate. We're talking about a team that was averaging 1.5 points a game the second half of last season as a potential relegation candidate. Wolves, Brentford, whoever you want to talk about as the team that would go down instead, are just so far ahead of all three of these teams, and I don't think anybody did enough to change that over the summer. Then, number 10, got to do some actual table predictions here. So, did the bottom three of the relegation teams for 9. Number 10, who actually wins this thing? I'm going with Manchester City. The simplest explanation for why is that under Pep Guardiola, Manchester City don't have 2 bad seasons in a row. I'm a firm believer in the difficulty of repeating as champions and the extra motivation you have coming off of a disappointing season and not winning. And Guardiola talks about this all the time, and you can say it's him just kind of throwing lip service out there, but there is some truth to it. It is so hard to go again and go again and go again and go again, especially when it's the same players. So Guardiola really cleaned house. Bunch of new faces. You get a whole season of Omar Marmoush. I expect Haaland to be much better. Curious to see how he uses all of these pieces and what it actually looks like. And maybe Liverpool is slightly better on paper. I would be willing to concede that. But that's a team that's obviously had a really difficult summer with the tragic loss of Diogo Jota. That's a team replacing a club legend in Trent Alexander-Arnold. We don't know what Arne Slot teams look like because he's never built one in the Premier League. That was a Jurgen Klopp team that Arne Slot did a great job managing. Maybe he takes them to a whole nother level. Or maybe they take a little bit of a step back. As much as they have done and as many good players as they've put, I'm the biggest Jeremy Frimpong fan out there. Obviously, everybody believes in Florian Wirtz. Kirk has had a great season at Bournemouth. It's not questions about these players individually. Now, if they get Alexander Isak and Mark Gahey, okay, maybe we're talking about something different here and there's just no way anybody can beat them. But until those 2 signings are official, I'm taking Manchester City. I have too much faith in Guardiola. This is just what happens. They have a down season every once in a while and they come back with a vengeance. He knew it wasn't good enough. He knew he didn't have the pieces, so he went out and got them. Liverpool 2nd, Arsenal 3rd, Chelsea 4th. That's my top 4. Those are my 10 Premier League predictions as we wait to get the season underway here in just a couple days. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.